Oh yeah. Happy new month.
Happy new month.
January imekwisha finally. I tell you, now we can begin a new countdown, but not the one you had started there.
I'll still continue with it. 13 days to Valentine.
Oh no.
13 days to Valentine.
That's not how to start the morning. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indimuli. How hot is the coffee where you are?
I'm usually standing here in it. It's a Thursday, talking matters, relationships. This particular morning we discuss to marry or not. Uolewe musiolewe. It's a whole hapo katikati. We'll be getting into that.
Kuoa ama kutooa? Umeongea usiolewe ama uolewe. There's also oa ama hautaoa. Yeah.
Kiswahili.
There's a difference between marrying and getting married.
Yes,
yeah?
Yes.
Is there?
There's actually a huge difference. Anyway, karibu sana, talk to us on our socials at TV47. What do you think? We'll be giving you that particular question of the day later on. But first, let's take a look at the dailies.
Yes, and on the Standard this morning, IEBC court deals Raila major blow. An interesting turn of developments.
On the Daily Nation, storm over housing levy. And they say it is a big divide. We'll be telling you why.
On the People Daily, the men who fell Ruto plans, and they have faces of those people who moved to court to challenge some of the government plans.
On the Star, trouble looms as Azimio plans a series of rallies.
And on Taifa Leo, kanisa la Makenzi ni kundi la wahalifu.
Right, those are the dailies this morning. Let's take a look at the weather. 17 degrees Celsius, but interestingly today, at around 8 a.m. all the way to around 10 a.m., temperatures are going to be as high as 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, but it's going to be as chilly, so do expect that. No rains today, temperatures as of high as 26 degrees Celsius later on. The roads this morning looking clear, not major snarl-ups on the major roads to expect this morning. Lusaka Road as clear as possible. There's a Capital Center. This red spot, I believe, is right. There's actually a slight snarl-up as you head into the Lusaka Road, but nothing major. Might be clearing off as we progress into the hours. And that is the roads this morning. We'll be updating you as we continue into the news diary, or rather the county diary, the very detailed, and to see how the roads will be looking like then.
Do we have a diary for this morning, though?
Oh, yes, we do have the diary for this particular morning. Let me just get it. So what do expect for this particular morning, the news diary, as we flip it with you. So first off, the deployment of county commissioners, the transfers of 12 county commissioners to news stations, and recalling of 5 others to the Ministry of the headquarters. This is according to the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki last week to enhance service delivery within the national government administration cadres beginning as of today. Moving on, it is the World Interfaith Week beginning today. It is an annual event observed during the first week of February since the General Assembly designation in 2010. So the General Assembly established the week to promote harmony between all people regardless of their faith. And away from that, Fred, interestingly today is World Hijab Day. Every year on the February of the 1st. The World Hijab Day recognizes the millions of Muslim women who choose to wear hijab. It's also a day to encourage women of all backgrounds and religions to wear and experience the hijab. Oh yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And today is also World Aspergillosis Day. So every year on this day, World Aspergillosis Day aims to raise awareness about this underdiagnosed fungal infection. It's also a day to educate the general public of the signs and symptoms of aspergillosis. Quite a mouthful word there. And that is the news diary as of today. Let's take a look at the news, rather
the highlights.
Today in history. And today, before we take a look at the highlights. So back in 2018, a day like today, quite memorable to many Kenyans, A day after the opposition leader Raila Odinga staged a mock swearing-in as the people's president, the former president Uhuru Kenyatta vowed to keep 3 stations shut pending an investigation. So a day like today, back in 2018, there was no breakfast show in above 3 stations.
Oh.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you remember.
I was there.
And back in 2010, Sri Lanka's president sacked a group of senior military officers who the defense ministry said they were a threat to the national security after the previous week's presidential elections. That is today in history for you. Let's get into the highlights to see what is happening.
The highlights this morning: government considering going for another Eurobond as deadline for 300 billion shilling payment for the first one draws nearer with no clear plan on how to repay.
And the number of active social media users rises to more than 5 billion, with the highest number on Facebook at 2.19 billion, Instagram with 1.65 billion, and TikTok at 1.56 billion.
YouTube terminates official channel of disgraced Nigerian televangelist TB Joshua's mega church weeks after an investigation by the BBC uncovered evidence of sexual abuse and torture by the late preacher. Now, those are just some of the headlines that we'll be looking at, plus a lot more later on. But first, let's go now to the dailies. All right, today let's do things a bit different and start with the People Daily. I'm hoping we'll be getting the physical papers for the 2 main papers so that we can get a look at the back page as well. On the People Daily, the front page, the big headline, "The Men Who Fell Ruto Plans." It has photos of 6 men: Senator Omtata, Professor Guy, Ekuru Aukot, Julius Ogogo, LSK Chief Theuri, and Magero Gikenyi on the front page. Now, speaking truth to power, staking their careers and lives on the line, public interest litigants are giving President Ruto migraines for moving to court and securing orders blocking his projects and appointments. It's just a list of those who've actually moved to court to stop some of the government's mega plans. That story is on page 4. Other stories given prominence on the front page. It's on the top strip, and chaos at Nyayo House over delayed passports. You remember a few months back, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki was at Nyayo House, and he camped there for a few days to try and resolve this. But it appears that things have gone back to the way they were. Chaos at Nyayo House over delay of passports. And the other story there, given prominence on the front page, on the inside pages of the People Daily, how red tape is to blame for death of wedding tourism. Wow, there are people who just come to Kenya or travel around Kenya to conduct their weddings. Those are the stories on the front page of the People Daily today.
Right, let's take a look at the Star this morning. The big story: trouble looms as Azimio plans series of rallies, and they see united opposition leaders to hold countrywide barazas against state excesses. They have that on pages 4 as well as page 5. On the bottom, photos there, U.S. murder suspect Kang'ethe detained ahead of extradition. And they also have, so the photo there, Margaret Mbitu, who was found murdered in a car at Logan Airport garage in Massachusetts. So Kevin Kang'ethe, who is accused of killing Margaret when he was arraigned at Milimani Lokot in Nairobi yesterday. Mbitu was buried in Highland Memory Gardens, Godbe, USA. So those are the photos of the burial that happened yesterday. Quite a sad state of affairs there, of increasing cases of femicide, not only even in Kenya, but even in Kenyans living abroad. Quite worrying. On the left, the photo there of President William Ruto holding the microphone. Say, peace mission, Kenya police to go to Haiti as soon as next week. Wow. So Kenyan policemen might be deployed to Haiti to deal with the gang violence in the Caribbean country as soon as next week, despite a court ruling that declared the process null and void. President William Ruto on Tuesday said the plan to send the police officers to Haiti will go on as soon as paperwork is concluded. How about independence of the judiciary?
Oh, how about obedience to court orders? Interesting.
In the Western region, detectives visit Khalwale, or the Khalwale home in Death Probe. That is on page 2. And an opinion there, policy making. All right, so that matters policy making needs faces, not findings. And at the very top scroll, just trying to have it there. Yes, there you have it. State moves to curb femicide with Airbnb crackdown. And they have a photo there of people marching and staging a protest. I believe there was a particular protest that was happening in one of the counties yesterday on the same. This even as a number of people staged protests, peaceful protests, last week on Saturday.
All right. Let's move on now to the Business Daily. The main headline there on the front page, middle class power bills jump 70% in a year. I actually tweeted about this because I was looking at how much I paid.
It went about 60%?
66%. So yeah, more or less 70%. In August of 2022, 1,000 bob got me about 45 plus units of electricity. The same amount of money sometime this month got me about 27.3 units, and yeah, more or less 70%. Middle class power bills jump 70% in a year. Cost of 200 units of power has shot up by 3,073. Increase follows end of subsidies and shilling free fall. You can read that story there by Constant Munda on the front page of the People Daily. The other story given prominence, and this is on debt. Ruto sets new Eurobond buyback dates as maturity looms. More details about the Eurobond and when it's due. It's due in June this year. Here's a Eurobond that we entered into sometime in 2014. And you can read about the government's plan to actually buy back or try and pay something. On the ticker, still on the front page of the Business Daily, state mounts new crackdown on short stay rentals, what people are referring to as Airbnb, but Airbnb is a service. It's a particular service. But these short stay rentals, most of them are unregulated or not even registered. Elsewhere, Kenyans defy rising costs to register 4,000 new companies. The rise of private company registration last year saw the number of new business entities on record grow by 2.9% to over 141,000. And finally, on the front page of the Business Daily, one more highlight: GMB maize flour miller put on sale for 400 million shillings. That's the front page of the Business Daily today.
Kwenye gazeti la Taifa leo vidokezo 6 vimeangaziwa, lakini habari kuu kwenye gazeti hili, kanisa la Makenzi ni kundi la uhalifu. Wasema katika kutekeleza mamlaka aliyopewa na kifungu cha 22 cha sheria ya kuzuia uhalifu wa kupangwa, waziri wa usalama anatangaza kuwa kanisa la Good News International Ministries ni kundi la wahalifu. Vile vile Good News International Ministries inahusishwa na mauaji ya halaiki Shakahola kule Kilifi. Masuala ya usalama hapo wamechapisha picha ya Paul Mackenzie. Pale kwingineko vidokezo vingine, akiri kudai mlo akidai ni mume wa hakimu. Alijifanya mpenzi wa hakimu mwandamizi wa koti ya Kilifi kwa miaka mitatu. Naweza soma taarifa hiyo kwenye ukurasa wa 4. Waliohamia katika ODM warejea PAA, walitangaza kurudi kwa PAA, duru zikisema kuwa wamehadaiwa vinono na chama. Kwenye masuala ya spoti, majabali wa soka nje ya AFCON. Mashabiki wa soka washuhudia matokeo ya kushangaza, Morocco nayo ikibanduliwa. Matokeo ya kushangaza kweli, ukiona kuwa nchi nyingine imesonga mbele.
Mbona unashangaa lakini? Mbona unashangaa? Masuala ya soka.
The mysterious. Vitokezo vingine pale juu, Raila kusoa mpango wa nyumba nafuu. Kinara ODM asema kuna njia nzuri ya kutekeleza mpango huo bila kulazimisha raia. Kwingineko, kaunti kununua fimbo ya mamlaka kwa shilingi milioni 30. Kaunti ya kashifiwa kwa kutenga mamilioni kununua fimbo ya mamlaka ya bunge. 30 million. That I think it's how do you call it?
It's called the mace.
The mace, yes.
Once you place it on the table, then the house is in session.
Yes.
Yeah.
For 30 million.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, a few years back, there was a scandal about the mayor's chain. When we used to have the mayor, and he used to have, I think, a golden chain, a very big one, and it had been stolen quite a number of times. And you actually steal it and go smelt it and make some gold.
Yeah.
So it was also quite expensive. So I'm not really surprised that the City County of Nairobi may want, or the County Assembly of Nairobi may want to purchase a mace for about 30 million, Bob? Oh, yes.
Reminds me of the millions of shillings of that seat. Which county is it? Of that seat in...
the special seat for the governor?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think
Siaya.
Somewhere, yes, in Siaya.
Wow. Anyway, the excesses that counties have. Moving on from Taifa Leo.
All right. I think now we have no choice. We just have to go to the Standard. Tumengoja ya kutosha. On the front page of the Standard, matters IEBC. Court deals Raila major blow. That's a big headline. Talking about filling the vacancies. Remember, we've not had the IEBC commissioners in place. A key recommendation of talks between President Ruto and opposition chief Raila Odinga could be rendered dead in the water after the High Court ordered for the immediate recruitment of electoral commissioners, emphasizing the need to obey the Constitution and noting that the talks did not have backing of law. That's the main story on the front page of the Standard, and you can read it further on page 4 of the same daily. Remember that deadline for the review, delimitation and review of boundaries, the deadline comes up in a month's time right now, because now today it's beginning February. By March, that deadline lapses, and there are those who say we could be headed to a constitutional crisis. The other big story, or the story given prominence on the front page of the Standard, Ruto's visa-free entry proves tricky for some. I've seen even Ghana have gone the same way, with President Akufo-Addo also declaring visa-free entry into his country. Another highlight, Tuju wants EADB officials summoned for questioning. He's still fighting his debt issues. On the right-hand side of the front page of the Standard, more highlights. Government suppliers to wait for pay. Issues to do with pending bills. You can read more on that on page 7 of the Standard. And that investigation still going on at the home of the Kakamega Senator Boni Khalwale. Is Bull Inacio innocent? Police seek answers. This follows the death of an employee working in that compound. And it was said initially that he was killed by a bull. Police are investigating that. I think more or less it's a run-on-the-mill kind of activity. Elsewhere on the top strip of the Standard, of the front page of the Standard, teachers furious over January's housing tax cut. Now, this is something that is controversial. The court has already ruled that this levy is unconstitutional, but I think those who have already received their pay slips are saying that the employer still went ahead and deducted.
Oh, yes. I mean, we saw videos of Kupet
Yes.
yesterday, and saying why was, why has TSC, already cut, demanding their money back.
And there's still demand for a refund for the few months that the deduction was made, yet the court had said that was unconstitutional. Matters business, AFDB gives Kenya's debt a lifeline. On the international front, Biden versus Trump. The possibility of that kind of race in the American presidential election later this year. Will it be Biden versus Trump? And in sports, will local coaches triumph? Matters to do with the Africa Cup of Nations. We're waiting for the quarterfinals later this week on Friday and on Saturday. Something to look forward to. Well, that's the front page of the Standard this morning.
Took Nairobi. Let's go to Dodoma and start with Tanzania.
I haven't taken a look at the Daily Nation, though.
Oh, yes. I think because we are used to starting with Standard and Daily.
Yeah, change things a bit.
Let's switch gears and go back to still in Nairobi, Kenya. And on the Daily Nation, they say storm over the housing levy. They have the photos there of about 4 gentlemen. Raila Odinga, who's asking the president to stop loading the levies and convene a national dialogue on the implementation of the housing project. The corporate secretary general, Kilo Misori, demands teachers are refunded illegally deducted levy and wants TSC boasts of contempt of court suit. The National Assembly Speaker, Moses Wetangula, files notice to appeal the Supreme Court the verdict declaring taxes unconstitutional. While Mbeere North MP, Ruku warns contractors who abandon project sites will be deemed opposition sympathizers and blacklisted from state jobs. Quite worrying there. Other highlights focused on this daily at the very top scroll. Khalwale says he has nothing to hide as police probe the death of his worker. And matters healthy. They ask healthy choice. Alama's more modern women opt to give birth at home. The highlights on the right, pending bills, hope for suppliers owed billions. That is focused more on the back page. They say state targets a mini budget in March to repay part of 630 billion shillings that contractors are demanding from government agencies. Treasury says a committee verifying the debts will provide the first list of claims. And from that, rogue officers let down defiled girls. So rights groups in Baringo protest at cases of some security officials, teachers and parents colluding with the suspects to defeat justice in cases involving violated girls. The criminal network is undermining efforts to combat the crime. Also in matters terror, Mackenzie Church outlawed by state. And that in a nutshell is the story is focused on the Daily Nation.
All right, now we can comfortably cross the borders and take a look at what's making headlines in the neighboring countries in the region. And we start off with Uganda. And on the front page of the Daily Monitor, this is the first daily we're looking at from Kampala, Uganda. How healthcare can be cheaper. That's a big headline there. Now, with medical bills a pain in the neck for many Ugandans, experts that the Daily Monitor spoke to have proposed a dozen ways through which government can lift the burden off citizens' shoulders. And the proposals are there listed from number 1 to 12 on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Experts proposing to lessen the costs of healthcare. And that's the main story on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Still other highlights to do with health on the front page. Ugandans to pay 46 million Ugandan shillings for kidney transplants. So matters health, once again, making it to the front page of the Ugandan dailies. That's the Daily Monitor.
Those are Ugandan shillings.
Yes, Uganda money. Uganda money. The 46 million, yes, Uganda money.
I've seen, when Kenyans see this, and they say, hey, kidney transplants in Uganda.
Yeah, it's too expensive.
Or rather, you actually, really, how much then will it mean to actually donate, rather even sell, quote unquote, your kidney there in Uganda?
Well, I want to see how much it would be in KSH. It's about 7,000 bob. 7,700. No, sorry.
46 million.
48 million or 46 million?
46 million Ugandan shillings.
Okay. Let me see.
That's about
1.8
million.
1.8 million Kenya shillings. So it does make sense. It does make sense. It's only that when you put it like 48 million shillings, well, you know. Anyway, Matters Health making it to the front page of the Daily Monitor. The other daily in Uganda has focused on matters education. How districts will share 136 billion education funds, and this is a new vision. The new vision, that's the other paper from Uganda. How districts will share 136 billion shillings, Uganda money, education funds. At least 13.5 billion will cover maintenance of academic institutions. And a photo there, down there on the front page of the new vision, Chinese marking the new year. Celebrations in Uganda. Someone else is doing the math on this Uganda money in comparison to Kenya. Are you saying 6.1 million or 1.6 million?
1.6.
6.1 million. Okay. Either way. It sounds more comfortable in Kenyan money. Yes, those are the stories making headlines in Uganda today.
There's one story you had skipped on the Daily Monitor that also touches Kenya. At the very top scroll of the Daily Monitor, Kenya-Uganda SGR works to start this year. And they call it the last stretch. So Kenya has said it will start construction of the last leg of the standard gauge railway this financial year, breathing life into the Ugandan line that has been waiting for years. And they have that on page 8. And also matters relationships, asking, is it love or lust? How to tell the difference?
Yeah. We can't compare. Relationships in Uganda are at a different level. Relationships in Kenya, we're in a different space altogether. So reading a magazine from Uganda on love or lust would have a totally different kind of meaning for Kenyan relationships or couples.
Oh yes, but just a reminder, we'll be discussing that matters, marriage later on around 8 a.m. Tuvuke from Kampala to Dodoma and start off with the Citizen, how bank assets jumped by 7 trillion Tanzanian shillings within a year. Matters banks were making the top news yesterday on this paper. So they say an analysis of 27 commercial banks show that their total assets rose to 51.22 trillion Tanzanian shillings in 2023 from 44.26 trillion Tanzanian shillings recorded in 2022. Other highlights at the bottom, horticultural exports up by 44%. Another paper here, Mwananchi. Hatima SUK iko shakani. Kwingineko, El Nino kupunguza kasi ukuaji uchumi. Pale chini, gazeti la Mwananchi. Kwingineko, serikali yatoa ajira laki moja. Okay, let me just do this in English because my mind is not thinking in Swahili right now. 137,294 kwa watoa huduma za afya nchini. Pale juu vitokezo vingine nchini Tanzania, wananchi walia tuta reli ya SGR chanzo mafuriko Moro. Also, matters SGR forming the big news in Tanzania.
Wow, they're actually blaming the SGR for the flooding in Morogoro.
Yeah.
That would be interesting if at all infrastructure can actually cause such calamities. Well, do we have any from Rwanda?
Oh yes, now from Rwanda, as always, matters development in that country. So according to Kamonyi, one rural hospital's transformation to eye care hub. So eye diseases are among the top 5 reasons people seek treatment at hospitals in recent years. More on page 4 and 5. And picture there the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Uziel Ndagijimana. And you said you can Rwandan names, you have to slow down when you're pronouncing them. Or rather, you bite your tongue doing so. And Heidi Rombuts, who's the DG of Development Cooperation at the Belgian Ministry. Other matters on the right, why there is no hero under Ingenzi so far. And finally, Eastern Province, the preps for top-level parliamentary elections underway. This is what is happening in Rwanda.
Interesting. The cartoon, today we only have the People Daily, Stano. He mirrors the same on matters education, the editorial comment on the People Daily on leaving no child behind in Form 1 admission. And the cartoon is simply calling for the authorities to ensure that all missing needy students join Form 1. It says, so it's true, education is a bridge to the future. That's a cartoon on the People Daily today. Unfortunately, we don't have the cartoon on the Standard or the Daily Nation to share with you, but we promise we will be able to do that tomorrow. All right, so yes, we'll be discussing this, some of these headlines with our panelists later after the break, and you can be part of that conversation as well. But very interesting conversation coming later on the relationships.
Oh, yes.
To marry or not. And you'll be in studio with someone else.
With Gashambi Nderito.
Gashambi.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Gashambi and Nderito, both of them are married, Stanley and Gashambi. Yes, but and then again, I think that's the right people to discuss this, because you're the ones mulling on whether to do it or not, whether to jump the broom or not.
Oh, yes.
Be part of that conversation on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya.
And this morning we're asking you, does marriage in this day and age offer any unique benefits? Does marriage in this day and age offer any unique benefits? Talk to us at Nyerungita_Fred Ndimudi at TV47 KE on Facebook, as well as TV47 News on X. Fred, you talk about the whole cartoons just as you were finishing that statement. The physical papers just came in, so I think we'll have to...
We'll try and see if we can sneak it in during our discussions later.
Yes.
All right, you're watching Morning Cafe. name is Fred Indimuli. Time now for us to take a look at the state of the nation. The big headlines this morning on the front page of the Standard: IEBC, court deals Raila major blow. That's a big headline there. We'll be looking at that. As well as the biggest talking point this entire week, storm over housing levy. And that's on the front page of the Daily Nation. Other dailies have the same story. On the People Daily, the men who fell Ruto plans, which include the housing levy. And I think the Star has something different. Trouble looming as Azimio plans series of rallies. Yes, this morning we're privileged to have in studio Bwana Kimone, a political commentator and also director with the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Karibu sana, it's good to see you in February.
Thank you so much.
You crossed over from January, you survived it.
Yeah, I survived the 79th day of January, so it is happy to be here in February.
All right.
Thank you for having me here again.
Yes, we'll be talking about that issue about the ID and the expiry later on, once the rest of the panelists join us.
Yeah.
But I want us for now to focus on this issue of the IEBC.
Yeah.
And the court dealing Raila major blow. They say now a key recommendation of talks between President Ruto and opposition chief Raila Odinga, which has a lot to do with the recruitment or the reconstitution of the IEBC, could be rendered dead in the water after the High Court ordered for the immediate recruitment of electoral commissioners, emphasizing the need to obey the Constitution and noting that the talks did not have backing of law. Now, of course, the courts are blind to any other process that happens out here unless it is actually backed by law. The NADCO report, which was out, we saw the kind of divisions within Azimio, especially on the outcome of that.
Yeah.
And the question is, should we still be waiting for NADCO for anything? Because especially when it comes to the issue of IEBC, we still have a Banisa constituency that doesn't have a representative for many months now. At least 2 or 3 wards in Kenya that still don't have
representatives.
Plus, there's that deadline on delimitation and review of boundaries, whose deadline elapses in March this year, exactly 1 month from now.
Yeah.
And should we still be waiting for that process that we so clearly saw them disagree on?
I want to, sorry for that. I wanted to say this. The leaders that we have now, most often than not, we do not have respect for the Constitution. Because if we did, we would not be doing things outside the Constitution. Because, like for example, the Constitution, you have said they do not have representatives. It is not the mistake of the constituency. The word, it is not the mistake of the residents. But when we engage in talks that benefit our political parties or us as the leaders in the political parties, then we do not even have respect for our constitution. So even though we may be wanting to wait for NATCO to give us directions, the political will is not there. Mm-hmm. Because someone somewhere feels if we do it now and we do it the constitutional way, it may not favor my political expediency. So whatever I'm saying is that the rule of the law has to be followed by even those who are in leadership. The talks that were there, the national dialogue that was there between ODM and UDN, all these kind of leaders, it was okay. But where was it anchored? It was only done to serve interest of some few people. Mm-hmm. And I remember myself saying and expressing myself in another baraza that, is it that we are looking for money to award the political bigwigs at the expense of what the Constitution provides? Mm-hmm. Because whatever talks were there, were they guided by the Constitution? And we see people who are there in those talks, they are lawyers. But they gave us a blind eye on what the Constitution provides.
Let's be fair to them. The NADCO report was to be presented in Parliament. Yeah. Of course, by the time the NADCO report was being unveiled, Parliament had already gone on recess, and they are yet to reconvene. They do so this month, I think 2 weeks from now. Yeah. But we are seeing that even as we await this process in Parliament, for the report to be presented to Parliament, for them to look at it and probably ratify it, if possible, or otherwise, that we are set to defy the Constitution at the end of this month, especially on the delimitation of boundaries and delimitation and review of boundaries. Because either way, even if the NADCO report was to go through Parliament, and they actually pass it, and they reconstitute the IEBC. It is impossible for us to reconstitute the IEBC, and then it's ready
for the delimitation of
yes. So hence the question. Yes, the process is there, and we know probably it will be anchored in law at some point, but we look set to defy the Constitution, and we seem not to care about it.
That is why I say the political goodwill is not there, because someone somewhere knew the schedules that NADCO is given. We knew by the Constitution by when are we supposed to review the boundaries. But when we are looking at all these schedules, our leaders, vis-a-vis what is provided for in the Constitution, they go ahead doing whatever will give them political mileage, even with the people, because they know majority of Kenyans, they may not know what the law provides. They may not even care. Given the high cost of living, no one cares about the schedules that are given in the Constitution. But our legislators are there to do that. But because it does not serve their political interest, they do not give it the priority it deserves. So even though we wait for the NADCO to come and give us the review, even if Parliament passes it, as you said, we do not have time for that delimitation. And there are so many people, Kenyans, who will be suffering. I remember the debate that was there, the distribution of our national resources. There are some people who will always be marginalized, for me, allow me to use that word, because the leaders that we have, you have the schedule you are supposed to follow, but you give it a blind eye, not because you do not know it. It is because Kenyans may not be knowing it, and it does not serve your interest. So that is where we are going wrong. Our leaders need to stick to what is provided in the law, and for us Kenyans, we need to abreast ourselves with what is it that is needed for our a member of parliament, our senator, our MP or MCA, to know which is whose duty to do this.
Okay. And if you look at the headline on the Star, it means that this problem could be compounded further. That's the headline of the Star.
Yeah.
Trouble looming as Azimio plans a series of rallies. And if you just look at the ticker just above that headline, it says that this game plan could derail approval of the bipartisan report, the same NADCO report. That yes, it could go to Parliament, but because of what Azimio is planning right now, there'll be divisions even in Parliament. And if they fail to agree, it means that, yes, right now we are already concerned about the delays, but this delay could actually be much longer.
I can tell you, this is what we call musical chairs. This is that is a game. Because ODM, Azimio, the parties that are in Azimio, for what they are doing, for now they have seen, because of whatever the cries that Kenyans have, they have seen an opportunity for them to go back to Kenyans to also tell them that the government is not working as we thought it should be working. But they do not tell them that even as we do so, we derail a government, a constitutional process that is supposed to be happening. So to Kenyans, it is about the cost of living. Azimio is taking advantage of how hard the country is hit. So they will be coming with rallies telling the people how the government is failing, but they do not tell them that even if as we go through these rallies, this and this is what will be affected. They keep that away from Kenyans.
Who do you think will take the blame for this defiance of the Constitution, especially when it comes to the delimitation of boundaries? Because the government will say, hey, we were ready to have the IEBC constituted and would have done this in time. But then we were forced into this dialogue that has delayed everything. But then Azimio will say, hey, we're not the guys in charge.
The person who will get the blame, they will share the blame. But Azimio, as I've told you, they will excuse themselves and say, hey, we know the government. For us, is to check the government. So the government was supposed to implement this. But the government will be saying, were it not for you doing the rallies, you should not be doing this. But I can tell you, the government should take the full blame. Because for them, they have nothing to do with the rallies. If they were doing what is supposed to be done, following the Constitution, there would not be these rallies.
Okay. Allow me to welcome Wakili Nordin Kagai to the panel. We've agreed that we are beyond saying Happy New Year now. So it's good to see you this side of January. Because now it's the first day of February. It's good to see you alive and well. Karibu sana. We were discussing this headline on the front page of the Standard on a court emphasizing, the High Court has ordered the immediate recruitment of electoral commissioners, emphasizing the need to obey the Constitution and noting that the talks, and by the talks, those are the national dialogue talks that we had at Bomas, did not have backing of the law. Now, this could deal a major blow to Raila because part of the agreement and discussion that is contained in NADCO is on the reconstitution of the IEBC. But we agree, we've taken too much time. We're already in defiance of so many things. But NISA still does not have a representative in the National Assembly. Yes. Other three, I think 3 wards countrywide don't have. The delimitation and review of boundaries, the deadline lapses in March this year, in a month's time, meaning that we are definitely going to defy the Constitution. And we are asking, should we still wait for the NADCO report, or should we go as the court has ordered?
You see, first and foremost, the problem as to why they ended up having that NADCO is because the law was changed as to the composition of IEBC. That is towards the election. And so those from Azimio felt like if IEBC would have been constituted the way the law was saying at the time, the president would have an upper hand, courtesy of the appointments that were going to be made as commissioners. That is why they had those talks. But now the sad reality is that, as you rightfully say, you know, there are those people who are infringed in that they are not represented, be it in parliament, be it courtesy of the members of County Assembly who have passed on. There are those elections that have been annulled by the courts. So there are some that people are either meant to go for a by-election. And so you've stifled representation, and that itself is an illegality. So you find yourself as well, as you rightfully say, IBC, there are a couple of things that need to be done. For example, you see, constituency, for example, if you're going to add them, it has to be 12 months before an election. Otherwise, they can't apply in that election. There's so much work that's supposed to be done. There are issues that were in the management of the last elections that need to be addressed. And one of the problems was that IBC received funds too late to the elections, and that they were claiming that in itself hindered their progress and planning. So we expected an IBC that would be constituted by now, so that they start planning for the elections. But sadly, we have this game of musical chairs where everybody wants to have a say. So these are players who want to choose their referees, the sad reality. That is the truth of the matter. Both camps want to control that body. So that I in IBC is silent, the independent. It's silent because there's no independence in there. Courtesy of the fact that they all want to have referees inside there. And that is a sad reality. And that is why after every elections, we see a faction that says we don't support these elections. That tells you either they were part of a certain group and this other side was in this other side. And that is the problem. So I believe in the court doing whatever the decision that came out yesterday, it is good because we have to move. But now the sad reality is that we know after this, of course, there are going to be some problems. Azimio, of course, will raise the tension, be it political tension or it all. And so we're going to see what NADCO comes up with. They are meant to try and implement it via parliament. Until now, it's still not law. It's still just a report, just like any other report. So it's going to be interesting. But I do believe that we need to have IBC like yesterday so that we solve the issues that are there. You know, there are decisions that come out of court courtesy of the fact that an election was either bungled or how it was carried out. So a new commission that should set in, plan. They're already time-barred as it is.
Yes.
They plan, and we find out. I've always believed that IBC needs to control its own funds. This issue of always waiting for money is the problem, because you look at the last IBC, they cried. They said they were crying for money until too late, and that is the problem. And we need to find a solution as to that. So unless we do that, we'll have this game every other electioneering period where elections come out and gentlemen meet later on to discuss on how to run the country. Okay. That's not what we want.
They say that if you have to name yourself independent, maybe you're not necessarily that independent. But
it is true.
There's some who argue that there could be another scheme that people are not seeing here. That probably this was designed to defy the Constitution intentionally because of this delimitation and review of boundaries for constituencies, because someone somewhere may not have been comfortable with that exercise happening as it's scheduled. It will determine a lot. Remember, the debate about 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote is very much determined by this. Don't you think that to some extent it could be true? There's some people who are not really comfortable with that exercise of delimitation of boundaries.
The sorry state of our nation is how we run everything, and we see it through the political lenses. The reason why we are doing all this is because our political leaders have been given all the powers even to decide whether to give the independent bodies funds to run. That is why you would even hear an arm of the government like judiciary begging for money from the executive. IEBC, the moment they are saying that we are not even fully constituted the way we are supposed to do, how do you then ask them to do their duty? You have already told them this is your job, but the enablers for you to do your job, we are keeping it. If we had a system where we have a schedule by when all these institutions should be receiving their money, and then we will be holding them accountable. Because trust you me, the politics and people are never told this by politicians. Whatever politicians tell and what they say on TV is what they want the people to see and hear. But whatever is really happening behind the curtains, they do not tell them. Someone somewhere is not comfortable with the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling somewhere. And because the delimitation of boundaries in the constituencies back at home will favor some, and some will feel like they are disfavored by it. So someone somewhere deliberately makes sure we do not have a constituted IEBC by the time we are supposed to have it. And if we do, they do not have the funds.
All right. Interesting. And anything to add on that?
You see, nothing in politics happens by coincidence. It's by design. Remember, there are those people who are promised during election period that they will get new counties. And you remember the person making that promise doesn't have the power to give you a county. So if at all he fails to deliver that so-called promise, he has IBC to blame. You najua waliandamana ABCD and we couldn't have an IBC. So that promise goes under the water. So I do believe it is, of course, it's by design, so that by the time, you know, we like doing things a shambolic way and in a hurried way. So by the time we start having a new IBC, those issues of delimitation are long forgotten.
All right.
And this is what I would add, Wakili. The biggest mistake we do in this country, we have not respected meritocracy. It is about friendship, it is about association, it is about my interest. Because why would a political party, the players, want to choose their own referee? If it is all about fairness, why don't we go, you deserve this position of the chair of IEBC by merit, not because a political party forwarded your name. Because the moment we get there, then we kill meritocracy. That is why even the degrees that we have nowadays, I'm sure soon we might even also hear the government saying that our degrees are expiring.
All right. And Kenya, as it is right now, we're hurtling down very fast towards defying the Constitution come March by failing to adhere to the laid down timelines on delimitation and review of boundaries as prescribed by the Constitution, not any act, by the Constitution. Not before 8 years and not after 8 years after the first one. That deadline lapses in March. We'll be discussing other issues after the break. Don't go away. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. I'm in studio with Kimone, a political commentator, also a director with the KNCCI. Also Nordin Kagai, advocate of the High Court. And we're discussing issues to do with what's on the headlines today. That issue on the IEBC's reconstitution. The court has now ordered the immediate recruitment of electoral commissioners, and this does not in any way recognize the NADCO report, which is yet to be presented to Parliament, and which the court says is not backed or does not have any backing of the law. Now, let's move on to something else that is causing a storm of a housing levy. It's a big headline on the front page. It has been the biggest discussion. The court made a pronouncement on this matter, the Court of Appeal. Of course, the Speaker of the National Assembly has already filed a notice to appeal that same verdict before the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, some employers have gone ahead and made that deduction in January. And Corporate Secretary General Akelo Misori is one of those demanding that teachers be refunded illegally deducted levy and warns the TSC boss of contempt of court suit. Now, this defiance of court orders is becoming more pervasive now. And the question now is what happens? Because that is one issue. The other issue that has also been challenged in court, and the court has made a pronouncement about it, is a sending of police officers to Haiti. And the president has said that that will happen either way, as early as next week. This defiance of court orders, obviously, has to have some consequences. You being an officer of the courts.
You know, contempt of court is treated very seriously. But sadly enough is that this is not the first government to disobey court orders. And I remember a few days ago we had the senator for Kiambu tell the president that you can defy court orders because the one was before you did so and nothing happened to him. So are you trying to tell us that we need to start making people account for contempt of court? I think we should, because you see, in as much as this government is key on having certain things expire, like even IDs, as we are told, court orders don't expire. Any day that you disobey a court order, once you leave office, you can as well take that upon you. And you can get sued and you can get charged, you know, because contempt of court is a serious offense at the end of the day. So I do believe it's sad when you hear leaders say they will not obey court orders. So who's supposed to obey them? Me? If you can't, why should I? If you say that a direction from the court comes, you won't obey, but you want to give policy that I should follow. Because you have no moral ground to tell me to obey the law if you can't obey the law. And the sad reality is that when it's sad that the president only remembers that he was sworn in and given a sword. He forgets that he had a constitution as well, among the things that were handed over to him. You see, you run the country with the laws. That is the constitution. The sword is more or less just...
But we're seeing a situation, Kimone, where it's true. Nothing will happen to them. We see even in Nakuru, there's a court order with regard to the ownership and control of a hospital. And the police chief there has defied the same order. And you wonder, okay, fine, if everyone is doing this, is there really any consequence to it?
I am a sad man today, especially when you mention Nakuru. Nakuru is my neighbor county. I come from Nyandarua. And when yesterday there was a funeral for one man whose dialysis were removed from him as he was getting treatment because of that war, yet there is a second court order. So when the governor sends her askaris to go and take out everyone who is in that hospital, including the patients, including the nurses, and then you see the CS in charge is silent, the president is silent, but someone's health, someone has died, someone's family has lost their breadwinner. It is sad. When we have leaders who do not obey court orders, I wonder, when the president himself pronounces himself that I will go ahead anyway, why is it that for him, he wanted us to respect and obey the orders that were given, even by the Supreme Court declaring him the president. But when he is now the president, he does not want to follow what the judiciary is instructing or giving directions. It is a sad story, and as my brother Wakiri is saying, us, Wanjiku, back at home, we are looking at them and wondering if you can defy as my leader, my representative, yet you want me, when you come to the ground, you want me to listen to you. You saw even the president getting asked by people in his, as Wakili said, when you receive a sword and forget the Constitution, I think he forgot the Constitution is not the microphone that he is using to address the people, because he should not have received that. You need to follow the court orders because you are, the presidency is unifying seat in this nation. If the president can defy court orders, who then will the police obey? Will the nurses obey? Will the teachers obey? Will the drivers obey?
Wouldn't it set a precedence where even the houses of legislation, because some of these issues that the executive, some of the challenges the executive is experiencing at the courts could be blamed directly on Parliament. Failure by Parliament or the houses of legislation to actually scrutinize these government policies and bills well enough to ensure there are no legal hurdles or to seal the loopholes. But if they defy the Constitution and get away with it, despite court orders, aren't we setting a precedent that you can come up with a flawed government policy or plan or bill and then force it through despite or in spite of the judiciary?
You know, first and foremost, I don't believe we have a parliament. Let's start from there. Because this is a captured house. And the sad reality is that, you see, members of parliament, you know, when people talk, they say we are in government, you're in opposition. You hear a member of parliament speak like that and you get saddened. Because at the end of the day, they forget that there are three arms of government. What do you mean in the government? Which you're an arm of government.
Yes.
So there is no single day the people are in opposition, the people you represent. Because at the end of the day, whether you're in Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, oversight role is on all of you. So you hear someone say, I'm from Kenya Kwanza, our role is to run the country, your role as Azimio is to check us. That is very flawed because you, as a member of Kenya Kwanza, you still have the oversight role. So, and that stems from the fact that they don't understand their roles. These people run for office without understanding. So you have a scenario where this house has, courtesy of the tyranny of numbers, the executive controls that house. That's why it's a captured house. That is why we were up in arms, those of us who are advocates of the High Court, to see that the CJ is opening herself for dialogue about what? What are you talking about? Talking about cases? You know, so for us, we feel that there need to be separation of powers, so that every arm of government works in as much as they depend on one another. There is a line where no one arm of government controls the other. Sadly, Parliament is being controlled, and that is why laws that are passed are either made from the State House or from any officer from the executive, and that is why when it comes, it just passes. The sad reality is that we have had members from Kenya Kwanza say that they have a manifesto to fulfill. That is perfect. Nobody is stopping them from doing that. Just make sure your manifesto is in tandem with the law of the land. If your manifesto is against the law of the land, then it will fail. I've heard so many of them getting angry because of the court decisions. Why don't you take time to interrogate what the law says in trying to come up with a policy? Now, let's say, for example, because you have tyranny of numbers, you walk around and you say, no, I'm the president, for example, of country X. I don't like the fact that people have two hands. And because I have parliament, I can legislate and we chop off every single extra hand. And parliament passes that. Does that become law? That's an illegality at the end of the day.
What do you make of this move by the Speaker of the National Assembly to actually file notice of appeal against that ruling? Because as it is right now, there seems or there appears to be a recognition or an admission to some extent that there were flaws, there were mistakes, and Parliament is going back to relook and make adjustments so that they conform with the law. But now you see the Speaker himself filing notice of motion to appeal against a judgment that said, yes, there were mistakes. What exactly?
This is where my brother said that it's a sad story that we have a captured house. We do not have a legislative house. We have a heckling club. And the blame here, I'm sorry to say that Kenyans, we did ourselves bad because the moment we started not voting for him because of the policies and the ideas he has, and we went for the village bully, and that is the one who got our majority votes, then you do not expect anything other than the bullying when they get to parliament. Because the moment you listen to the executive and they decide for you what to do, because I belong to this political party and we are the majority with numbers in parliament, then you can do whatever. Because whatever we are seeing with the parliament now is because Indimuli is on the other side, supposedly. Remember, you are an MP like I am. So long as you are in Azimio and I'm in UDA, it is a competition. We will say this and see how you will check us. So it is not about the public. They do not even go. I always ask people, because the president, for example, let me use him because he is the one who is in power now. The president, Ruto, says he had a manifesto. Who drew this manifesto? Was there a public participation? No, it were his ideas. Then when you get to power, who subjected your ideas to the public participation for you to know whether the public wants whatever you have written down? No one. So members of parliament who came and joined you in a political party, they get to parliament because they were looking for a job. So when they go around telling you young people they need to get a job, I always ask them, you left your business to come looking for a job, but you're telling the youth to go look for a job somewhere. Then which these jobs have you created? Because even in your manifesto, it was not provided for, and that is why there was no public participation. So when we see it in members of parliament arguing, it is not anywhere about Wanjiku. It is about them and the political party muscles that they want to keep on entangling each other. It is the sad story that we do not have legislators. We have shouting competitions in a man's club somewhere called Parliament.
And the nation has quoted one of the legislators there on the front page, away from the speaker.
Yeah.
And this is Mbera North MP Geoffrey Ruku, who has warned contractors who abandon project sites that they will be deemed opposition sympathizers, and they will henceforth be blacklisted from state jobs.
You know, it reminds me of a saying that I really love. If you elect clowns, expect a circus. Yeah. So you look at that statement and correlate it to the one who said that we are going to defund the judiciary for not complying.
Now, these are statements from members of parliament,
yes.
not even cabinet secretaries.
Yes. Yeah.
These are
forgetting that issues of funds, you know, the judiciary is a service that Kenyans need to have. It's a service. And so you cannot stifle the judiciary just because you feel they are not conforming to a certain way of doing things. And that is the error we have, courtesy of the people in that house. This is one of the worst houses we've ever had in history. And I remember there's a day, because I follow that house, the sad reality, there's a day they had to adjourn because they didn't have quorum. Yeah. So the deputy,
do that quite regularly.
The deputy speaker was like, there's no quorum to even continue today, so let's meet in the afternoon. So, and that is the house you expect you and I, when we have issues, for them to address the issues. Let's even talk about the public participation they're talking about. We're waiting to see what they're going to come up with, courtesy of the housing bill, because at the end of the day, there are recommendations from people, and most of the time, this public participation is more or less lip service. You speak and you go, and they still go ahead and do whatever they want to do. And at the end of the day, if they could listen to what the court said and what the people really wanted, the representatives that they represent, then we'd be at a better place. But the sad reality, as rightfully says, they are at the beck and call of the executive. What the executive wants is what they get. So at the end of the day, I'm not surprised to see the Speaker of National Assembly make an appeal. It's okay. That's as per the law, he's allowed to do so. But it tells you it's a direction from somewhere. So at the end of the day, in as much as we try to speak about independence, they also should understand they need to be independent. If they can't be independent in their thoughts, then we have a scenario where, I remember during the Finance Act, Omushomba was categorical against certain issues like the fuel, the increase in fuel and certain things. And she was called out by her own party, saying that, why are you against the party? So you're telling me the interests of the party should override my personal interest as someone who elected you. And that is the problem. So at the end of the day, unless Parliament really rises up to the occasion, we'll have a scenario where it's always going to be an annex To the executive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Allow me to welcome Kathy Irungu to the panel. Kathy Irungu is a political leader. Karibu sana to this discussion.
Apologies for the little arrival.
Yeah, we've agreed that we cannot wish each other Happy New Year in February. So we just say it's good to see you this side of January.
She also survived.
It's good that you survived. Yeah. Karibu sana. And you found us discussing the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation, Storm over Housing Levy. It has been the biggest discussion point over the past few weeks. And of course, that declaration by the Court of Appeal last Friday sent shockwaves within government circles. We're seeing so many things happen. The Houses of Parliament, the Speaker has already filed a notice of appeal before the Supreme Court on that issue. We're seeing now members of Parliament more and more acting as cheerleaders for the executive. And we are wondering whether that is what Kenyans expect of them, especially on this matter and in as far as obedience of court orders. What is your take on that?
Thank you very much, Indimuli. I think actually Kenyans expect more from their leaders. I mean, these are the guys they elected, whether they're in Parliament or actually in both houses, so to speak. And we are actually living in very interesting times where a president or actually the executive, these guys have gone out there and they have said they're not going to obey the law. And they're saying, yes, of course, the law allows them to appeal as many times, but I think now they're heading to the Supreme Court and that will be the last one. My question is, after Supreme Court, just in case, even if they appeal again at the Supreme Court and doesn't go the way they expect, are we going to see more of the executive and even the people that are elected to Parliament and other places go around and tell people that we must do this? Mm-hmm. The question is, why are they hell-bent to implement the housing, the affordable housing projects or the housing levy? Why do they want to tax people for this? Okay. And to me, it's more than meets the eye. Yeah. Because whether it was in their manifesto or not, the fact that there was no public participation, the fact that Kenyans are actually having all these complaints, the high cost of living and everything else, why do we really want to implement this? And do we have other biting issues? Is this the only issue that Kenyans are actually struggling with? Mm-hmm. Is housing our priority? No, we have other priorities. We do not have medicine in our hospitals, you know, and so many other things. We have so many kids. I think I was looking at the statistics yesterday, and we have so many kids who have not been able to report to secondary schools because their parents cannot afford. So to me, housing is that this housing project is not really a priority. And my call actually to both the executive and even these people who are in Parliament, and if they really care, if they are listening to Wanjiku, the people who elected them to those positions of power, they need to stop this.
Okay. The question we're asking is, because it would appear, and if you look at the front page, it is nobody here, none of the faces belongs to the executive, which is behind this proposal. Mm. It is the Speaker of the National Assembly who is going to court, the MP of Mbeere North who is going to court. We've heard the Leader of Majority in Parliament say they will relook at the budgetary allocation for the judiciary. We've seen another Member of Parliament repeat the same. And many people are wondering, why are parliamentarians sounding as if they are more aggrieved, yet they played a role in passing laws that maybe were not looked at properly, hence the legal hurdles they're facing at the judiciary?
I think what we are seeing now is actually a parliament that does not actually represent Wanjiku, because we actually elect our leaders to go and represent us. But the parliament we have today is a bunch of leaders, or a bunch of people who are actually there to represent the voice and the will of the parties that they represent. And that is very wrong, because they should actually be listening to the people, to the common mwananchi. What does the common mwananchi want? It is actually very embarrassing that someone like, the Honorable Moses Wetangula, and of course a very good friend of mine, Honorable GK, are the people who are going to court, are the people who are pushing for this really to happen. It is actually very embarrassing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
many questions have been asked about the role of Parliament in this whole issue, because it would appear the executive has come together with the houses of legislation to go against the judiciary. But people are asking, then what is the role of Parliament? The numbers are good, from a party perspective, Kenya Kwanza has a majority. The numbers are good, politically speaking. Yeah. But do the numbers offer quality? When a proposal or a government policy or bill passes through Parliament, but still encounters legal hurdles after that, surely, if Parliament was to do their job properly, the executive would be having it smooth sailing by now.
I will agree with my sister here that members of Parliament that we have now, sorry to say, majority of them are racketeers. Majority of them are business people. I am a director in chamber and I know what business means. So these people are not even coming for public participation because they want to enlighten the public that they represent. They are coming to force it down their throat that this is how to happen because the president said so. The question would be, there was one funny clip that was going around social media. One man asking, "Nani hana kwao?" Because now, when you implement housing, affordable housing, are you telling me that you will also do it for the Ogieks who live in forests? So who will cater for their interests? When you go and construct affordable housing in Olkalau, Nyandarua headquarters, and you're constructing it for someone who comes from the farthest end, Kanjuiri or Ndaragwa or Uruku, will we be living in Olkalau and going to our farms in Uruku? Where do I live now? Who tells you that a house is my priority now? Is it education? Is it agriculture? Is it health? No, because members of Parliament, and I will tell you this, with all the risks of being blamed as sympathizers of opposition, because majority of the people who are in this industry, real estate industry, are suffering. Because the government is coming and saying, this land belongs to the government. They are constructing this house at a fee. And then you are living in a house that you pay 1,500. And you are told this house, when it is done, you will get it, but you will be paying 11,000. Who will afford this? How affordable is that? The other question is, majority of these people who are doing real estate, the government is coming and telling them, we are buying off this project, and they are naming it housing, affordable housing. So they calculate your percentage of profit. And if you refuse, they are taking it and saying the land belongs to the government. So business people out there are suffering. So when we say the affordable housing project is not a priority and it is not meant to benefit the public, even the Honorable Selassie was asking the other day, if the government, the house is on government land, if someone else comes and says you are sitting on government land, you need to vacate, who will you ask as a public?
Okay.
Yeah.
I want us to move this discussion to something else, which is still related to the high taxation measures imposed by this administration. And the IMF, interestingly, and I'm referring to an article on the Financial Standard this week. I think it was on Tuesday.
On Tuesday, yeah.
The IMF warning that some of these measures, which have been proposed by the IMF itself, could possibly lead to social unrest. You've just seen that headline on the Star this morning about Azimio planning rallies and other ways to actually protest what the government is doing.
Yeah.
But it reads, trouble looms as Azimio plans a series of rallies.
Yeah.
We've seen how that kind of environment affects this economy. Now, when the IMF comes and they know what they've asked Kenya to do, then they come and say, yes, this is a prescription we've given you. But this prescription, ujue iko na side effect. And the side effect is possible social unrest. What is it? Then it should be back to the government to actually balance between what it takes from the IMF and the empathy it may have for its own people. Do you see that kind of attempt to strike a balance?
I really don't see it, because I believe they take whatever advice they get from IMF or directions, and they don't correlate it to what the interest of the people. Because I'll give you an example. The president there's a day he was telling us about how there's someone who took the Hustler Fund, it grew and Ital and helped in his business. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're on Mamboga, for example, and you take that Hustler Fund and you're able to buy your kales, your tomatoes and everything. You have good stock. And the people, as it is right now, there's an income problem. So who will buy your stock? It will get stale. So how has that Hustler Fund helped you as a person? You now have a debt and your stock is stale. So how are we moving? And you correlate that the IMF is saying to the people which you have an income problem. That's why you keep saying, for example, in as much as we have a housing problem, the biggest problem is the income problem. Because even if when you go back to housing, for example, after the houses are complete, before you move in, you have to pay 10%. So what is 10% of a certain unit? If it's 1 million or 2 million, 3 million, do you have the money for that? If you can't, then if, for example, you are living in a slum and they upgraded that slum, and those people who live there cannot afford the 10%, so they'll carry that slum they had there to a new slum. So what have you solved, essentially? So only those who will have money will be able to buy those houses. So you find a scenario where the government forgets that the biggest problem they have is an income problem. Yes, you are being told this affordable housing project is actually creating employment. But how much employment, how many people are you going to play with that? And then the long term. So once you're done with the houses, what happens to that sort of employment you get? And what happens to those who have actually gone to school and they seek some other forms of employment? So at the end of the day, I believe the government is still not sure what the people want. And that is what you're talking about, the interests that actually mean more to the people.
Hence the public participation that Parliament has been undertaking as they prepare the affordable housing bill. But then the question arises, how come you're forcing, you appear to be forcing this issue, then you've just completed public participation actually yesterday.
Yeah.
So who informed this insistence that parliamentarians especially have, now that we are seeing them on the front pages, to go to court and challenge some pronouncements by the courts? Don't you find that a bit disingenuous?
I think this begs for still another question. How do we do our public participation? What is this that we call public participation? The way we do public participation in this country is quite interesting. Number one, the very people, and I think, let me say this at this point, this should be a wake-up call to Wanjiku. The way we run our public participation is that we get people into a hall, and I think we discussed that a little bit last time when we were here. You get people into a hall, you give them handout, and they sing your song. And they don't behave any different from the people you are seeing on this front page of the Daily Nation. The person who attends public participation just comes to rubber stamp things that have been discussed at another level, maybe in Nairobi, in Parliament or wherever, and they just come to rubber stamp and agree with what the Member of Parliament, the governor, wants. If you remember very well, the way this thing started, there was no public participation in the first place. Public participation happened when the court ruled, I think, the first time. And now they decided, okay, I think we need to engage the people. We had not engaged the masses, so let's try to engage the masses. There's no public participation that is happening, if you ask me. What is happening is rubber stamping. And these people are just getting, the members of parliament and whoever is organizing and mobilizing the people at that level, they're just getting people, they're yes man. They're just getting people who come and say, okay, this is very good. Are they going to continue with this public participation? If you look at all the other areas, of other spheres and other very critical areas that need public participation. We are not doing public participation on health. We are not doing public participation on education. We are not doing public participation even on amendment of the Constitution that we keep talking about every day. So this public participation in the first place was not done. It wasn't in good spirits, if you ask me. And therefore, whether there was public participation or there was no public participation, to me, it is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
There's something that we said here. In politics, nothing just happens. It is planned. So the public participation that they are conducting after they have already told you, Kenyans need to wake up and see. They have already told you we are buying a white cap. They have already set their mind, and that is what will happen. But because the law says there should be a public participation, we didn't ask first the people, do you want blue or white or black? We said we want white because someone somewhere wants a white cap. So when they are doing this public participation, when they have already pronounced themselves and they have gone ahead even to deduct percentages of people's salary, and they were not involved before, it is only telling them the yes men who are being mobilized. Because there is no way in Dimuli you will leave your job today where you're hustling for your family to get food, and you go sit down where a member of parliament in a committee somewhere comes to you at 3 p.m. to ask you whether this should happen. But they are coming and reading to you something you do not even understand, and they ask, Wangapi wamesema hiyo kitu ni mzuri? Then you always are, because your member of parliament has explained it in a language that you feel is good, but it does not benefit you. So whatever is happening is not public participation. They're just trying to look for ways to beat the law, to defeat the constitution and how it is said. So this is not for the public. And I said, there are people. Just like the other day, if you remember very well, my sister, there came a time when they were saying that we are planting 500 billion trees. And there was even a day we were given a holiday. I can tell you for sure, some people somewhere, they ran those nursery beds. Someone somewhere was selling seeds. And I can tell you how that came to be, because someone's in politics, someone who funded the government in place today, was to get their money. How do we get their money? We get your business and fund it in a way that climate change, we are doing all these good things, then we sneak it in. This is something, I told you, majority of the members of parliament we have and the people in the executive are just racketeers.
Your take on the quality of public participation?
You know, the sad reality is that we don't have public participation in this country, be it at the county level or be it at the national level. Because at the end of the day, it's always geared towards what if we have a court case against us?
Yes.
So they're trying to find a scenario where, because I'm an advocate, I'll tell you this, so that when you go to court, they'll table, oh, by the way, it was in this hall, these people were there, so we need public participation. So we need to understand the threshold. What is adequate public participation? Now, you're having a house that is doing public participation, right? Or a committee. And this same house has said that this levy must be there.
The speaker
These
himself has
houses
filed a motion.
will be done. The speaker is appealing a motion. Members of parliament have said, judiciary nyinyi will deduct your money. So what is the participation there? What are we participating about? I already have a notion. Clearly, whatever I'll go to say, there is lip service. They look at me, we laugh together. Once I'm done, they're like, good riddance. So at the end of the day, this reminds me, it's, you know, they do things a very topsy-turvy kind of way. Let me give you a good example. The Haiti issue. So you have a scenario where you haven't planned and you just decide to agree to certain directions from wherever and you want to send your police service there. So the questions in court before Justice Muitawa, number one, there are allegations that in Haiti, there is no legitimate government. There is no legitimate parliament.
Yeah.
So where is this communication coming from? The people in Haiti don't even recognize the prime minister that is there, all right? And when you look at our Police Service Act, it talks of a police service. And when you look at our law, it talks about a force. So you cannot then deploy a service unless they want to change the Police Service Act. Then you ask yourself, so what are they? There are so many procedural issues. I had the president say yesterday, oh, the communique will come from Haiti. So who's going to send the communique? There's no president, there's no parliament. So we wait to see. And then this is not the first mission that has happened there. There was the minister mission that happened back in the day when under the UN, which brought about issues where the forces that were deployed there ended up having a problem with the people. So the people ended up joining the gangs to support themselves as opposed to the forces. So we need to understand that the issues of Haiti are tricky. And if at all, as Muita said, if at all we have to go there, then we have to address the procedural issues. Now the president is saying it will be done even as soon as next week. We wait to see. But if they don't comply with the law, believe you me, they will continue getting angry on top of vehicles. They'll continue threatening the judiciary. But at the end of the day, they will not be able to do anything because you have a scenario where there is the law. There is your plan. That plan must fit in the law, not the other way around.
What would happen if the president remains true to his word and sends some officers to Haiti next week in defiance of that court order?
And that is where and that's why I was saying, you know, we need to have a scenario where we were told by the Senate of Kiampu nothing will be done. Then an example needs to be done. Because that is contempt of court. You know, no one is above the law. And that is why you were sworn in and given a constitution. It's a rule of law. And he's one of the biggest beneficiaries in this country of the law because the Supreme Court actually confirmed your victory. Okay. So if it can do that, you can clap. So today when it rules, the court rules against you, you are against it. It doesn't make sense. All I say is the government needs to invest highly on proper legal advice. If at all it hasn't. But if it has, and the advice or opinion isn't being taken, so the AG should do the honorable thing like what Githumigai did. He said, I give opinions, I give advice, it's not taken, I'm out. Because why would I earn a salary and I advise the government of the day and everything I advise the government of the day, let's say he does that, and it's never taken into account.
Okay.
So what is my role? If I told those in the government are all knowing and all seeing, so what essence is the AG's office?
Okay. The other issue, and I know even this one has been challenged in court, is the rollout of the Maisha number. And in this one, there's a very interesting inclusion there, is a new identity card that has a microchip that also comes with an expiry date after every 10 years. Now, this was stopped by the courts, but an insider, the Ministry of Interior, has confirmed that it's been tried in Tanzania. And I think only last year, they decided to go back on that and say now there will be no expiry. But it is not the first time that, because the argument is that even your ATM card which uses a microchip has an expiry. The passports too do have an expiry. So what is a hula baloo about, Kathy?
I think the first question I keep asking myself, there was, during the past, during the other government, Uhuru's government, there was the Huduma number. And I think it's the same one that mutated now to Maisha number. The question I keep asking, are we creating these projects because Kenyans need them? Or are we creating these projects for entrepreneurs? These are some of the things that we need to ask ourselves. And it goes back to what I had said earlier. I think we're having our priorities, upside down, and it's time we looked at that again. But having said that, I think we're still going to see more defiance, and we're still going to see more. As I said, the government is hell-bent to implement some of these projects and all these things that they keep coming up with. And what needs to happen is that the public, or the person I keep calling Wanjiku, needs to resist. I keep asking myself, as we say all these things, as we have these debates in these rooms and in through the medias and all these other platforms that we have in this country, how come the public is seated pretty? We are sitting pretty. We are doing a lot of complaining, like what we would call in our Kenyan language, chini ya maji. When are Kenyans going to say enough is enough? When are we going to see a generation, especially as the young people, start speaking out and saying, we can't continue running the country like this. Unfortunately, most of us young people, and if you check, look at the people who were, who went ahead of us, they actually stood for this country. Now we are having a generation where we know that this is wrong, but we still, close one eye, open the other, and say, okay, wacha tuipite. I think it is time we started showing, as young people, we start telling the government, enough is enough. We can't keep debating about these things. Today we'll talk about fertilizer. Oh, there's this fertilizer that was the one that came and it was supposed to go to the farmers. And it ended up in some stores and warehouses, and it was actually sold to farmers. We keep talking about these things of housing levy. We know it is wrong. People understand that it is wrong. We talk about the Maisha number that we're discussing here right now. The question is, when are we going to say enough is enough? And I think that time has come.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as the people who vote, I will actually blame the people who vote. We are also the problem. We are to blame in a big, big way. Kenya has a very large population of people who have gone to school, people who can read this, the day race, people who can listen to us having this conversation and understand, but we still end up voting the way we vote. We still end up with the kind of leaders that we have today, the yes men.
Okay.
There's a problem. And that is what we need to start
back to the issue of Maisha number, because yes, the Maisha number rollout was stopped by the courts, but as it is right now, if at all you lose your ID, or those who are applying for their IDs for the very first time are getting IDs fitted with microchips, and they have the expiry date. It is not the Maisha number, but the document you're getting has that. But my question again, this is not something new. And we are not the first ones. Actually, within the EAC, probably we will be the third or among the last ones. Tanzania started it in 2013 when Jakaya Kikwete was president. It's only last year that they did away with that expiry. Uganda started theirs a year later in 2014. The first expiry is due this year. And people are wondering, one may wonder, what's a big deal? if we do the same here, just have an expiry date to the ID?
The big deal here is because us as leaders, us as Wanjiku, do not know what we want. That is why we keep on comparing. It was done in Uganda, it was done in the US, it was done where? This is a problem that we have, including now the person we have in the office of the president, that he says East Africa and the AU will not be summoned somewhere by one person and we all go. We should stop, we will be sending our representative. Where is he now? The others didn't go. They never came with the idea. He came with the idea, but he went. Maybe he went to see whether they came. They had him when he was saying that we should not be going. Maybe that he was going to monitor. When you say that an ID card should expire, my question is, what prevents your degree from expiring? What prevents your marriage certificate from expiring? What prevents your good conduct certificate? What prevents your help? What is this expiry that we are coming up with? Because the moment you tell me that my national ID, a government document that identifies me as a taxpayer or as a member of this country, is expiring, which is issued by the government, then I'm advancing in age because I get that when I'm 18 years. Then a degree should expire because as I advance in age, I'm losing my memory. So I'm telling you, I tweeted about that when they came up with that Maisha number, and I told people, your ID soon, because they have said when you lose an ID, it is 2,000. Because now they will know you will take care of your ID. They will come up with a way of making you pay for that money they're looking for. So whatever is wrong with these people is that they're not telling Kenyans, we just want money from your pocket. Because the reason why a driving license expires, it's not because you have forgotten how to drive. It's because they want to get money from you when you repay again. I may justify a driving license being checked because of the accidents you may have caused. But we need to be having a system where if you're flagged by 2, 3, 4 mistakes, traffic offenses, then it is not the expiry of your driving license. It is a revocation of it. When we say that an ID is expiring, what happens to that person who has already died? What happens to someone who has now been locked in police cell or in jail for over 20 years?
Yeah, the argument means that the kind of data we are working with this time is digital data. And after a while, after 10 years, a lot has changed. The way you look has changed. Probably your weight, your height to some extent has changed. And they say probably there's need to update that information to be in tandem with the current reality, and that 10 years time probably
then they should be telling us they want to put a chip on me, not on my ID.
But you know, the most interesting thing is that this don't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't change.
the biometrics.
Exactly. So even if I grow bigger, I grow smaller, biometrics are still the same, unless I lose my biometrics. So at the end of the day, I believe, like rightfully said, it's a way of getting revenue, which is sad because, so does that mean maybe one day also our citizens will also expire? So I have to reapply for my citizenship. You know, that's a joke. You know.
Allow me to challenge that thing about revenue, because if we may say that Kenya Kwanza wants its revenue, in 10 years' time Kenya Kwanza won't be there. 2034, when the IDs are due to expire, there will be a different administration. You know, are we saying that this administration may be keen on revenue that they will not enjoy?
Let's be honest. What is the need of putting what's the need of an ID expiring, and then you put a figure there? You know, if it was expiring and I don't have to pay to renew it, that would be okay, sir. But this clearly there will be a 200 or 300 shillings that will have to be paid, or 100 shillings that have to be paid. That's money. Remember when Moses Kuria came into office, he said that services at Huduma Center now have to be paid for. And you realize those services, you do pay taxes. So am I paying double tax? Is it double taxation? Yeah. The sad reality is that, because I remember I was part and parcel of the Huduma case that was in court, courtesy of NRF, that was Nubian Rights Forum. And the issues that they raised were simple. They were saying, as per the Huduma number that back then when Uhuru was president, they were saying the first thing these people ask in that form is your ID number. So if you don't have that, you don't even fill the rest of the form. So you have Kenyans who are Nubians, lived here for decades. Someone is 30, 35 years old, doesn't have an ID card. That person can't work, can't own a bank account. In short, you've killed that person. And then you are saying you want to digitalize the identity. So the questions in court were like, Before you even do that, you have not even solved the citizenship rights of these people at the end of the day. So has this government solved those rights? No, it hasn't. So we are rushing into this so-called so-and-so is doing it. Oh, by the mafuta hapa ni mingi, but even Tanzania ni mingi. Even we can't work like that. So at the end, I know you love borrowing, but we should also only borrow what works at the end of the day. You can't borrow everything. So at the end of the day, I believe this government is in a rush to try and implement certain things because, you know, there's a craze of we were the first to do it. They love that statement. This is the first government to do ABCD, first government. But I believe on things like citizenship and identification, that's a very crucial aspect because I believe once you digitalize this information, let's say we get to that point, how safe is that data? Because you have to realize that data is currently the next oil. So how safe is that data? I have a question as I finish. When you get to 18 years, you apply for a passport, right? They take your biometrics, all right? If you didn't have a passport when you were a child, you apply for a passport, right? They take your biometrics, right? When you go for good contact, they take your biometrics. So my question is, how come all these things can't be linked? Where is our data center?
Probably that's the whole point of Maisha number.
Because, okay, and you realize how safe is that data? Because you see, at the end of the day, let's say we digitalize all this, because they need to look at the aspects. Once we digitalize all this, because in future that's where we are going, we need to have a scenario where the data is safe, where no one can actually try and infringe the rights, because you see, your data is your right at the end of the day.
And don't you think that on that issue of data safety enhances this argument by the ministry more, that probably because of the safety of data, we need to ensure that how we store this data, after every 10 years, these cards are returned or they're obsolete, so that the data, to ensure security of this data, because if these cards fall into the wrong hands and all your data is there, and probably you've just lost the card, but the data is still active after 10 years, probably there would be a problem.
I mean, I don't think so. For me, as I said, this is a project that is just going to create a revenue for people. But let's look at it this way. In this country, we have more priorities that we are not looking at. For example, we need data even to address issues like cancer. If you look at the epidemiology, I mean, there's so much data that is lacking that is supposed to contribute to development and into addressing more pressing problems than what we are talking about. The argument that this data will expire or something, that the chip is going to expire, and then we should invest all these efforts in doing something that is going to benefit the masses. For me, there's no argument about that. We may want to look at it in a very scientific manner and argue scientifically and look at things and continue with this conversation to other levels, or even having workshops and conferences. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Are we not just being reluctant to adopt technology? Because yes, any new technology, even artificial intelligence, has received a lot of opposition. Even the internet itself was opposed initially. Of course, so with new technology comes new ways of handling that technology. And we're seeing, and the argument by the government is that this is a practice that has worked elsewhere. Are we not looking like we're just opposing it because we do not know how it works? And if
we are that really friendly into implementing some of these projects, why are we not digitalizing the way we conduct our elections? Why can't we conduct voting electronically? Because I know this is one of the areas where the politicians will not agree. So why are we taking all our time discussing all these issues of digitalizing this and doing this differently? Well, I think, to me, how we can resolve all these problems is by voting electronically, so that we don't have all this conversation that Honorable Raila keeps complaining about Fungua Saba.
Because the problem will be someone has to make money from the paper tender.
Correct.
This is what I'm saying. When it comes to the policies that we have today, it is not about our safety. It is not about our people. It is about what do I get out of it. So the security of our data, as my brother said, there is no way you have my biometrics when I'm applying for good conduct, when I'm applying for birth certificate, when I'm applying for ID, when I'm applying for my passport, yet you cannot use that data to safeguard the interests of the government. As we are saying, if this at all, this was to get digital. If we were to get digital, let's start first with that which is very key to the people, having the best and the good leaders in place. Digitalize elections. We cannot do that because we know someone somewhere is benefiting.
An interesting conversation right here on Morning Cafe with regard to expiry of IDs. And it is a reality because those who are getting IDs now.
And in Dimbuli, you should tell Kenyans, if an ID can expire, I will repeat again, your degree will expire with this government.
And your marriage certificate.
Your marriage certificate will expire.
Okay. As we wrap up, I'll give each one of you an opportunity to say something, but I want you, because we did not really talk about that IMF assertion that this could lead to social unrest. And it is a huge concern because you mentioned it and you talked about resistance. We're seeing, as you're talking about the rallies, and it creates a different kind of atmosphere because the comparison that was being drawn by that article is what happened with the Arab Spring, that kind of uprising. And many people may be wondering, is that where we're headed? And how can we stop that? So we start with you, Nordin. This issue of social unrest, if at all people are pushed into a corner, is it something that we can reverse?
You see, it can be reversed only if policies are people-centric, in that you make policy and you realize that in this policy we are making, how will it benefit the people, as opposed to trying to only implement a plan that you have. And then the government should focus on necessity as at of now, because people have different needs. There's someone who needs that house, someone who needs income, someone who needs to go to school. You've been seeing the stories of those people who can join Form 1. So that person, and you're telling him you're building houses, they're like, there's a disconnect. They're like, are you even serious right now? There's that person who's trying to run a business. Businesses are closing down. People are getting, they're losing jobs. So there's a different conversation that needs to be held in this country. That is the necessity and needs of the people. So the government needs to be alive to what is essential as of now. We're not saying close your proposals or your plans. Make your plans in such a way that they also end up affecting positively the needs of the people. If you don't, then people get to a corner where they've lost everything. There's nothing else to lose, so an uprising comes, like uprising. So something small like bread triggered, like in Sudan, the price of bread going up. So you have to realize that you put people to a corner and you push them, and they get to an enough is enough situation where they've lost everything. There's nothing more to lose. So it's that common phrase, when the poor have nothing, they turn on the rich. That's what happens. So at the end of the day, and the rich in this case is that political class at the end of the day. So they will be the casualties, sadly. So at the end of the day, you have to realize that they have to be more people-centric, be it policy, be it laws in parliament, and be it the implementation of those proposals that you have. So that let's just not have a scenario where you have a certain goal, and that goal doesn't affect me positively. So I am helping you achieve your goal, but in return, I am crying.
Okay.
So I'll get to a point where, like, you're very selfish, and I'll reverse that. So you have to feel the pain that I feel, and that's a sadistic way of doing things, sadly. So unless the government is alive with the fact that we have different needs and wants, then we won't be in a scenario where we talk about an uprising. But if they forget that, we are not any special from the Arab uprising that happened there. There are human beings like us who go to a point when they're like, you know what, let's lose it all. Okay. So I hope we never get there as a country, because no one wants to see their country go into political instability. So we just pray and hope that those in leadership focus on helping the lives of the people, and don't make it a political campaign or rhetoric, because that doesn't help.
Okay.
So that we have a scenario where we grow as a country, be it have a stable political atmosphere, grow economically and socially, so that we don't complain that we are losing business to the other East African countries at the end of the day.
Thank you, Nordin. Kathy, you go next.
I think number one, and I want to agree with Wakili, nobody would want to see their country go that route. But as a people, it is our responsibility to also keep correcting and reminding the government that they need to do the right thing. How do we do this? We need to be very, very sincere, even when we're doing the public participation that we have been talking about now. But I also want to call upon the women and the youths of this country. Yes, we're already in this situation. How do we get ourselves out of here? I know I said that we need to resist. Yes, we need to resist. But we need to resist in a manner that we make the people aware we need to start, having conversations at that very local level with our people and telling them that this is not, the country is not going the right direction, but also trying to help them change and look at our leaders differently. So that the next time Wanjiku is going to vote, the next time you're going to that ballot box, and the next time you're ticking on a certain name, then in your mind, you know the kind of a person that you need to vote for so that we don't find ourselves again in this situation. I'm actually very surprised that every time I listen to the current politicians, they are talking about a 10-year rule of the current regime. They've not even done 2 years. It's only 1 year, and you can see the direction the country is going. I mean, how do they even start talking about another election, like the next election, that we're going to elect X, the deputy president to this is going to be this, the president is going to, do all this in the next term? Can we address the issues that we are facing right now? And if we get it right, of course, they are guaranteed another 5 years. Okay. But let's not talk about the 10 years, if at all. In 1 year, this is where we have found ourselves as a country.
Okay, finally, Bwana Kimone.
Thank you. My remarks goes to the president, and I will want to tell him very respectfully, Mr. President, you are a very, very good orator, but a good speaker needs to be a good listener. What you're doing right now, you're only listening to praise and worshipers who are surrounding you. It is the high time you climb down from your high horse and start listening to the people. When a mother does not listen to the cry of a child, that child becomes a rebel. What you're seeing and you're facing now when you go to these public rallies is the cry of the public. Right now, they may say there will be problems if Azimio calls for rallies. Azimio do not need to call for rallies. Where we are headed, the public will come out. Mr. President, it is the high time you agree and accept that no man is an island and no one has the monopoly of ideas. Listen to your CSs, listen to the MPs, listen to the MCAs. Sit down in office, at least for a year. Stop bringing down the honor of the presidency. Whatever you're doing right now, you're diminishing the office that you occupy. No one is a know-it-all. Stop it. Listen to the public. And if you do that, maybe you will survive a term. Not even the 10 years.
Wow. Kimone, political commentator and also director KNCCI. Nurdin Kagai, advocate of the High Court. And Kathy Rungu, political leader. Thank you so much, our panelists this morning, for coming to TV47 to share your opinions on the matters and the headlines that matter to Kenyans.
Thank you.
Straight to editorial comment this morning. Now, in the wake of the tragic incident that claimed the lives of 17 individuals on Monday this week, in the most recent fatal road crash involving public service vehicles, it has become painfully evident that urgent action is needed to address the alarming surge in road-related fatalities. With more than 120 deaths on our roads in the month of January alone, this disturbing trend demands immediate attention and effective intervention. One of the recurring factors contributing to these accidents is dangerous driving, particularly reckless overtaking, often occurring during the night. Now, this reckless behavior not only endangers the lives of those directly involved, but also poses a significant threat to other road users. The current state of our roads raises critical questions about the enforcement and effectiveness of previously implemented measures. The Mishuki rules, for example, which were introduced to instill discipline on our roads, have lost their efficacy over time. The lapse in enforcing regulations requiring the installation of speed governors and safety belts in public service vehicles has exacerbated the risk factors associated with road travel. It is imperative that we revisit and reinstate these measures to restore order and safety on our roads. Traveling on Kenyan roads has regrettably become akin to participating in an extreme sport where safety is neither promised nor guaranteed. The mounting casualties underscore the need for a renewed commitment to road safety. As we embark on the new month of February, let it be our collective goal to strive for safer roads in Kenya by prioritizing road safety. We can work towards